Welcome to SVG-TV News. It's for Friday, July 24th, 2015. I'm Lathryn Fraser with the details. A second eruption was earlier this morning recorded at the submarine volcano Kikamjeni. At a media conference earlier today, Director of the Seismic Research Center at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Richard Robertson says, following the first volcanic eruption shortly after 1 on Thursday morning, the Seismic Center continues to record elevated activities at Kikamjeni, along with earthquakes, with some becoming bigger during the day.
And then it got a little bit quieter again yesterday afternoon. And then early this morning, just after 12 o'clock, we had another one of those events. Again, it generated a T phase, and it looked like another eruption. So we had an eruption early yesterday morning, Thursday morning, and we had another event this morning. And we are continuing to have elevated seismicity. And the kind of way, that kind of pattern is how Kikamjeni erupts. Usually it has some sort of elevated seismicity, then it goes into an eruptive period where it might have one eruption or when I say an eruption, it means during these events some magma has been extruded onto the earth, onto the surface, underneath the sea, either as some lava flow or some explosive event. And in between those you have increased elevated seismicity. So you may have one or two of those episodes. So it's possible that we may have another one, but eventually it goes, if it follows the same pattern, it will go back, the seismicity will drop off, and it will go back to being very quiet again until the next eruption, which we hope is in the next 10 years or so, if it keeps the same pattern.
Dr. Robertson says while the eruptions at Kikamjeni are operating as expected, they are keeping a close eye on the volcano's activities.
That is that it's built up, it's having some eruptive episodes, some eruptions, or people call it that. If you had the volcano above the ground, you might have seen that, you might have had probably an explosion, you might have seen magma coming out. That's what you would see. Now because of how deep the volcano is, and because perhaps of the size of the events that's happening, the magnitude of the eruptions, they're not breaking the surface, so you wouldn't necessarily see any physical evidence of it unless you were in a submersible under the sea. So the thing to take away from that is that the eruption is happening as generally the way that we expect, and we're keeping a close eye on it because we would want to see if it continues in that same pattern or if something has changed or if it's changing, and that's why the Seismic Research Center is keeping a close eye on it. We're working closely with the disaster managers in the region to ensure that they are informed about what is happening, because they would need to be, so that they could take any measures, that they put all their plans in place if they need to have any response. They need to inform the public, and we're doing that.
In related news, the Seismic Research Center director says he does not think the potential of a tsunami is quite great or is something persons here should worry about. Dr. Robertson says while Kikamjeni is operating in a pattern it has operated in before, it is possible to have some disturbance of the water around the volcano, but it is nothing for persons to be too concerned with.
When a volcano erupts, you constantly keep an eye on it. You're constantly assessing what is the potential, and reassessing it and informing it. It's a dynamic situation. So even though we don't think, if it operates like how it normally operates, that should be something that people should worry about. It is always something that one must plan for. These are things that can happen, but it's not something that people should get panicked about. Once you have a monitoring system in place and you have people looking at the volcano closely, they can see how it evolves. Why we think it's not likely now has to do with the fact that it's operating the same kind of way it's operated before, and it has generated small events in the past that got to the north coast of Grenada, but nothing any kind of scale that people are worried about in terms of tsunamis. Secondly, the magnitude of events that are happening, the size of the eruption suggests that it's still staying within the kind of range that we'd expect, which if it stays within those ranges, it wouldn't generate any kind of wave. Thirdly, it's quite deep beneath the surface, and it's more difficult for it to generate and disturb the body of water above it if it's quite deep. So one of the things that we'll be looking at is if the eruptions continue, if it continues to build up and that kind of thing.
While Dr. Robertson is urging persons to go about their business as usual, he's also advising Vincentians to know what emergency measures are in place on the island and ensure that they continue to listen to the authoritative sources of news and information.
I'm not covering up anything. I'm not discounting anything. I think people in St. Vincent certainly, and hopefully in the rest of the region, know that Seismic is a professional agency. We provide a service to the islands of the Eastern Caribbean. We're very serious about what we do. We have a lot of very dedicated staff, and therefore our objective really is to keep a close eye on things so that we could assess what is the likely scenarios, what is happening, and advise the authorities, and we continue to do that. As far as we get information, we put it to the people who you have established to manage the situation, but also we put it as quickly as possible after into the public domain. And the information that we are telling you is not very much different than the information that they are getting. We are telling you that the pattern is as we have expected in the past. It's evolving as we expect. There's no indication that it's changing, but we are keeping a close eye on it to see if it changes. We're telling you that the threat of tsunami currently is really quite small given how it's evolving, but that you can't discount those things completely. And therefore, there is no reason why you can't go about what you're doing normally.
The Seismic Research Director also dispelled claims that the swarm of earthquakes off the coast of Barbados is directly linked to the eruptions at Kikum-Jenny. Dr. Robertson says there is no causative relation between the two sets of activities and persons should not make such a connection. And Deputy Prime Minister Gerlin Miguel, who is at the moment deputizing for Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who is currently out of state today, spoke to the media on the Kikum-Jenny eruption activities. Miguel says the government is extremely grateful to Dr. Richard Robertson for providing the people of SVG with expert information on the underwater volcano activities, adding that Dr. Robertson is in the right place at the right time. She also provided a summary of the actions taken by the government thus far since the elevated activities at the underwater volcano.
Our Marine Administration was tasked with disseminating information regarding the 5-kilometer exclusion zone around the Kikum-Jenny summit to local, regional, and international marine interests. This was done, and all night long, last night, the signal station at Fort Charlotte was heard advising shipping interests about the 5-kilometer exclusion zone around the summit of the volcano. Currently, seismic activities at the Kikum-Jenny submarine volcano remain elevated. The Seismic Research Center indicated that an eruption occurred at 12:02 a.m. this morning. There is no threat of a tsunami for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the 5-kilometer exclusive zone around the summit of the volcano remains in effect. Mariners are asked to adhere to this exclusion zone. The National Emergency Management Organization will continue to provide updates from the Seismic Research Center and the National Disaster Management Agency in Grenada.
The acting Prime Minister told Vincentians that there are lessons which must be taken away from the Kikum-Jenny experience over the past few days.
One important lesson is the need to learn to listen to the voice of authority in these matters. If we feed off rumors, we will raise our anxiety levels much higher than is necessary and will cause panic. I urge you to listen to the voice of authority on these matters. I commend our people for remaining calm. We will continue to monitor the situation and to provide information quickly and accurately.
The Electoral Office will, on Monday, July 27, 2015, conclude the 30-day period provided in the Representation of the People Amendment Act 2015 for voters to update their voter registration and, in so doing, avoid being excluded from the next voters list to be published by the Electoral Office. The Supervisor of Elections has, however, advised the registering officers that registration should be done on Wednesday, July 29th to cater for any persons who could not have been accommodated on Monday, July 27th. Additionally, the Electoral Office says it will continue to complement the efforts of the registering officers until Friday, July 31st. During the month of August, the Electoral Office says it will focus on the preparation and publication of the voters list. It is encouraging voters to scrutinize the lists and to report any any discrepancies to the supervisor of elections or to the registering officers who will still be available in their respective constituencies. Consequently, it says there will be no registration in the constituencies from August 3rd to September 4th, 2015, and the office will provide emergency services to the public during this period, including the distribution of national identification cards. Voter registration in all 15 constituencies will resume on Monday, September 7th, 2015. Leader of the opposition, New Democratic Party, Anim Eustace, has written a formal letter to the police commissioner calling for a thorough investigation into the defacing of his constituency office in the Sign Hill area. In the letter, Eustace outlined that in the early morning hours of Thursday, July 23, 2015, a number of assailants applied red paint to the recently painted exterior walls of the building which houses the East Kingstown NDP constituency office. The NDP leader says he considers it to be a politically motivated criminal act. Eustace says the act of defacement and vandalism must be investigated so that the perpetrators can be brought to justice. Continuing now on the local scene, police are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of Andre Sweat Chewett, a 39-year-old businessman of New Montrose, which occurred at about 7:40 p.m. on Thursday. Reports are that the deceased sustained several gunshot wounds about his body. His brother Keith Josh Francois is rattling his mind as to who would have killed his younger sibling and why. Just outside his shop in the New Montrose area, Francois was looking at his phone with a photo of his deceased brother, who was reportedly inside his shop with another young man when he was called outside and showered with bullets. The other young man reportedly fled the scene without injury.
Last night, my sister messaged me and tell me they killed my brother. But I didn't really believe. So this morning now, a friend of mine, which is a friend of my brother, come and knock my door and say, Josh, they kill your brother now. They kill your brother right on his steps, but I still ain't believe. But it's when my sister from Canada tell me now. I start calling my rest brothers and sisters them in America and tell them we're going. But when I come now, I see the blood on the ground. That's when I really believe my brother dead. And I see the blood on the ground.
Francois remembered a kind-hearted brother and says he will be very much missed.
Well, I would like him to be remembered as a good man. Yeah, because when I down and out, I could come and tell him I have nothing, and he will give me. If my children them need something, and I ask him, he will give me to give them still. It's sadness. Nobody can take it good. Because one of my sister now telling me she want to come but she can't stand up. Yeah. And my brother them crying, my sister them crying. Everybody feeling it. Come up here, everybody around. Feel it for him.
The World Pediatric Project, the WPP, recently established a new post here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in an effort to raise funds and awareness to continue providing medical assistance to the ailing children of SVG. The WPP links worldwide pediatric surgical, diagnostic and preventative resources to heal critically ill children in developing countries. The new WPP Chief Developmental Officer says the World Pediatric Project has 10 missions for this year. He, however, added that the cost for one surgery for a child is $200,000 to $300,000 and that funding has become a challenge. He says despite this setback, they will continue to seek ways to raise funds throughout the region and here in SVG, since it is the organization's belief that children are the most critical to any country's development and future.
The World Pediatric Project has been here for 13 years, and we've done over $30 million US of care for children of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and children throughout the region. So that's one big number we have to remember. The other thing is that there doesn't seem to be in St. Vincent and the Grenadines the kind of awareness we need for the World Pediatric Project. The only people that I run into that actually know about the World Pediatric Project are people that have taken advantage of the service, meaning that their kids or their relatives had actually have gone through the program. But otherwise, when I walk down the street and I say, that people ask me, hey Simon, who are you working for? I say the World Pediatric Project. Nobody knows. So kind of one of my goals here at St. Vincent and the Grenadines is to actually build some awareness to what we do here, and I'm also talking about building a movement that you will want to join.
Carey is encouraging all Vincentian businesses and other stakeholders to support the project, adding that these are life-changing and life-saving surgeries, but due to the high cost involved and lack of access, would not be available to families in SVG in any normal circumstances.
Some of these operations that the kids are going through are unattainable in normal circumstances, not only for kids of St. Vincent and families of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but also families in the States or Europe or wherever they're from. I mean, some of these surgeries that happen in the States could be upwards of $200,000-$300,000, and that's unattainable for anybody. And so these funds are being used for is just that. It's the operational cost of the World Pediatric Project.
9 finalists have been selected for the preliminary round to compete in the finals of the annual Courts Ministry of Education reading competition. The finals is scheduled for Friday, September 25th at French's House beginning at 9 a.m. The finalists are Joella Campbell of the Spring Village Methodist, Jidin Leah Chambers of the Barley Government, Nadira Morgan of the Kingstown Preparatory, Caitlin Polius of the Windsor Primary, Brianna David of the Cane End Government, Christy Oliver of the Paget Farm Government, Azaris James of the Lourdes Primary, Shaquan Sam of the Langley Park Government, Janus Lucas of the Caliqua Anglican, and Saskia Trusho of the Sugar Mill Academy. The winners of this segment will represent SVG in the regional finals slated for Dominica in October this year. In honor of Haile Selassie's birthday, the Anniversary Rastafari Movement Incorporated distributed 500 plants and seedlings to Vincentians yesterday in the hope of raising awareness about taking care of the environment as well as their physical well-being. Education officer with the Anniversary Rastafari Movement Incorporated, Empress Madupi Jacobs, says that the organization is dedicated to seeing a cleaner, healthier SVG and urges Vincentians to become better informed on how they can contribute to this goal.
And we're giving away moringa trees, seedlings, and other plants. This is to raise awareness around the importance of taking care of the environment by planting more trees. And we should be planting trees that are edible and that are medicinal plants, trees that are good for the environment, trees like moringa and pawpaw and aki, and so on. The purpose of this activity, as I said, is to raise awareness around the dangers of GMOs, LMOs, the chemical pesticides and fungicides and herbicides that we have flooding the agricultural lands here. We're trying to help make St. Vincent a climate compliant nation. That is, we want to erase our carbon footprint. So we're trying in every possible way to reduce, recycle, and reuse all the plastics, the bottles, everything that we have that could potentially become a hazard to the environment.